Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate you've been looking for. For most Americans, images of the Bahamas depict the usual: pristine beaches, sparkling seas, great weather, and an all-around great time. Just recently, though, these images were replaced with headlines of a U.S. travel advisory categorizing the Bahamas as a common place for criminal activity. It warned against burglaries, sexual assault, and armed robberies. Not the kind of activity you would associate with a vacation paradise. And true to form, the U.S. media gave it the full headline-grabbing gasp they thought it deserved. Well, what they didn't report on were the actual statistics. 6 million visitors last year and 43 crimes against tourists, none of which were murders. So this evening, we will attempt to help you make sense of it all. On this edition of On the Record, fact or false alarm, the U.S. crime advisory in perspective. It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our discussion begins on the other side of this break.
On the Record is brought to you by Alive, the nation's newest and best LTE network.
Good to be alive.
That Alive has. It's allowed me to save a little bit of money on my mobile phone service. The reception is always great, and I especially like the roaming services that the company provides. I've traveled all the way to Southeast Asia with my Alive mobile service. I've been to Italy with it. I've made calls in those countries, and the service was always clear, crisp, and I never had any sort of problem whatsoever, so I was really impressed with that. My name is Lazar Di Lorenzo Charlton, and I believe in best.
Are you afraid to swipe your card and you don't like to carry cash? If so, you need checks. Executive Printers can make checks for all your needs. They have laser checks, personal checks, continuous checks, and more. All checks have up to 15 security features, so you know you'll be protected. You can even customize your checks. Come and see one of our experts today, or log on to epbahamas.com for more info.
And welcome to our show tonight. The annual crime statistics showed marked decreases in most of the major crimes, with a few exceptions. Yet, a U.S. State Department travel warning has painted a very different picture. Americans may now be taking a second look at the Bahamas. Here's a look tonight at where we are. A simple Google search of the Bahamas over the weekend would have given insight into the impact of the report. A travel advisory for the Bahamas. A Level 2 advisory as categorized by the U.S. State Department. Concerning at best for the traveling public. At its worst, a potential setback for a local tourism product growing by double digits. The report, almost identical to the year before, stopped short of outright warning against travel, but got phones ringing and general inquiries soaring. Tourism officials were caught off guard, to say the least, and the response showed it.
We're a little surprised by that, a little dismayed by that, because our crime statistics have decreased so substantially. We would have thought that it would have been a better rating. I mean, to lump us in the same category as Mexico and Jamaica, to us seems a little harsh.
It advises against over-the-hill areas, Waukee, and references sand trap. an area which has been closed since a shooting in 2016, which coincidentally is just next door to the U.S. Marines complex. Even the authorities seemed taken aback by the annual advisory. Police and national security had only weeks earlier touted declining crime statistics, yet the response was measured, promising to continue to do what is necessary to make our visitors safer.
But we'll continue to work with countries from around the world to see how we can work together to collectively focus on the things that we need to focus, to ensure that we meet a point where we're all happy.
The Ministry of Tourism almost immediately issued a lengthy statement outlining the various improvements in areas highlighted, like regulated water sports, the installation of CCTV, and reiterating that safety and security on land and sea is critically important for visitors and for the Bahamian people. Of course, it didn't receive near the same level of coverage in the foreign media as did the initial State Department warning. And we're back in studio tonight. Our topic on the record tonight, fact or false alarm, the U.S. crime advisory in perspective. My guest I'm very happy to have in studio tonight, Assistant Commissioner of Police Clayton Fernando. Also, Eldry Ferguson, a partner with Diane Phillips and Associates, but a longtime marketing and PR executive. And Diane Phillips of Diane Phillips and Associates. She's a journalist, writer, has been involved in PR and marketing and so many other things, worn so many hats for so many years. Ladies, gentlemen, welcome to On the Record.
Thank you.
I have to put in a disclaimer right now. Eldry used to be my boss at one point at BTC. I just want to put it out there.
Thank you.
So I'm now in control. And I just want to, but folks, thank you so much for coming tonight. This has been a very important show for me. It's been, I'm just going to say this, it's been very difficult to get guests to come on because of the sensitive nature of this. It seems that people have been speaking in various quarters. I mean, you've heard about the response in the ministry and the other places, but people have been reluctant to speak about this because of what it is. And I'm going to take a little bit of liberty here and say it's because nobody wants to offend, the great United States. But I think it's something that we do need to discuss. First of all, I want to get sort of your reactions to all of this and when it happened. Diane, I'm going to start with you. I mean, what was your reaction? And just to put things in context, you have been involved in not just in public relations and marketing in your business, but you've been involved in so many other aspects of tourism, whether through your involvement in organizations or some of your clients. But having, and also as a journalist, when this happened, what was your initial reaction?
Honestly, Jerome, my initial reaction was total, is there a word like flabbergastedness? If there isn't, there should be.
For this occasion.
We can work on that next. I thought it was unwarranted. I did call a few clients to see if they wanted to participate in the show, and they were all, as you said, reluctant to do so. There are two reasons. One, as you mentioned, they're afraid to offend the U.S. They feel that they should not speak out. The other is they feel that the more we talk about it, the more we perpetuate the thought and just the language around the fact that there is a travel advisory in a country in which most of us feel very safe. I suspect that you and Eldry, that people from the Royal Bahamas Police Force and others among us are more worried about places we go in Miami or elsewhere in the U.S. where many Bahamians have been held up and robbed by the time they have rented a car. We worry if we're carrying any cash on us, even $500 or $1,000, is someone going to follow us? I think that I can only guess that some of the information that travel advisory was based on was a bit old. I would love to be able to see what actually constituted the content of that advisory.
Assistant Commissioner, from December of last year, police were touting and celebrating. Well, you were happy to report that crime numbers are down. In this very same studio, I would have had a lengthy conversation with the Commissioner about what led to the reduction in all major crimes, and then this happened.
Yes, Jerome, the police force is doing their part to ensure not only our Bahamians are safe, but visitors alike. That part of it being addressed The advisory is being addressed from another level, but I could speak directly to what the police is doing. And what we are doing is we are being guided by our Commissioner of Policing Plan for 2018. 2019 plan is just a little tweaking because 2018 worked.
I was going to say, if it ain't broke,
why fix it?
Right.
We're just building on that to take it to another level. You are seeing police presence throughout, not only in the tourist area, the downtown, the areas of our Waukee and Porterski Dock. We have increased police presence, not only just now, it was always continue to increase. We are guided by crime trends, and we put up our GIS mapping, and we look at the crime trends, and based on the crime trends, we move extra resources in those areas. There has not been no high volume of reported matters of tourists being attacked, but there are a few. There are a few that we were able to bring to closure, and there were a few that was unfounded, and we dealt with those matters.
And just to put things into perspective, 6 million visitors coming to our shore, 43 crimes against tourists, but there is an advisory. I mean, and I'm going to, Eldridge, bring you in now, from a branding perspective, and tourism and the Bahamas is a brand.
It is.
It is an internationally respected, well-known brand. This is a black eye to that brand at a time when we are doing exceptionally well. Again, the tourism minister would have been on the show, and tourism would have talked about the double digits in tourism and all that's happening. You've got Bahamas, you've got the Family Islands that are reporting, year-round tourism in many places, great numbers, and then this happens. I mean, this is I call it a black eye to the brand.
It is, and I think Diagula and the Ministry of Tourism officials were correct to be taken back by the comment. But one of the things that I really want to discuss, if you take it back a bit, when you discuss brand, I think there are some proactive things that should have been done, and I think they were neglected. There are reasons why we have embassies, consulates, and all of these, I call these intercontinental or agencies across countries, and there should have been some established communication. It's almost embarrassing to see a piece put out where the information is so old and it's not current, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, the most important thing is it suggests that there is some breakdown in communication. Why do we have these consulates? Why do we have these embassies? Why do we have these other mechanisms and institutions in place that encourages communication across borders that's supposed to make sure that things like this don't happen? And I think it suggests that we have to be a little bit more proactive about the management of our brand, because branding, you can look at it in two phases. It's what you do behind the scenes, and then it's what you do after in terms of the pictures, et cetera, et cetera. And I also think it suggests in terms of a response, you commented, and I think the package that was sent out earlier talked a little bit about, the Ministry of Tourism's piece not being widely shared. And from a communications and branding perspective, it also suggests to me that we can't rely on mainstream and conventional channels in terms of distribution of information. Something so critical that would have occurred, there's a reason, and Diane, I learned from Diane. I love Diane. She's a mentor, but you have to establish your networks. And when something like this happens, you have to say, well, what are the stakeholders? What are the areas? Who are my stakeholders that mean the most to me? And where do I need to get the communication into?
Diane, I want to get to I know you've got one, but the industry's response. I know that you are involved with a lot of industry stakeholders, and I'm curious as to what has been the response of it.
The response has actually been a little bit more muted than you might expect, because I think they too were taken by surprise. They don't feel that Nassau is a dangerous place. They don't feel that the Bahamas as a whole is a dangerous place. There are many places you can still stay in the Family Islands where you don't even get a key to your hotel room because you don't have to
leave your
lock
car
it.
unlocked.
Yes, or loan it to somebody and just say leave the key, in the ignition. And so I think that there has not. I think they were as taken back as we were. But there is a report out by an international agency that says that there is an 82% chance that you will face, every corporation will face a disaster or a crisis, a brand crisis in the next 5 years. Therefore, as Eldry was saying, it is imperative that every corporation, and you can think of the Ministry of Tourism as a corporation,
Of
that's
course.
why it is a .com instead of a .gov, .bs, as all, because it is expected to earn money and spend money. So as a corporation, so to speak, it needs to have, and I'm sure at some level it does, it needs to have a plan in place, just a disaster or preparedness plan, just as we would for hurricanes or anything else, because that's all a brand crisis is. It's a disaster, so you have to have a plan. You have to know what your message is, you have to know who your messenger is, and you have to know what channels you're going to distribute that message through. So those are the 4 components that I would like to see emerge from this. Maybe it's a lesson. Maybe that.
Hopefully.
Maybe we will learn
Hopefully.
something from
Hopefully
it.
it is.
And going forward, it won't happen. And I think the faster we stop talking about it,
Yeah,
the quicker
for sure.
it'll go away.
The thing too is, it's important, and I'm glad you brought it up, that I thought it was important for us to have this discussion at this time, so that if and when it happens again, we are prepared. Assistant Commissioner, do you find that Bahamians really safeguard our tourists from criminal activity? And I'll tell you why. Sometimes I see tourists walking in over the hill areas, and I want to stop and say, do you know where you are? Do you need help? And I'm sure there are other people like that, but as a people, do you all find that we are a little bit more protective of our tourists? And I always wonder about that.
Yes, Jerome, I totally agree with you, because sometimes while out there on patrol and I see that happening, I will stop and find out where you're going, why you're taking this person over the hill, because we know and we find
It's not at all.
It's not at all. So we try to disrupt things like that, and,
Sure.
and we as Bahamians, tourism is our lifeline, and they have to pay attention to that. We should not try to move them in areas where they'd be vulnerable to get robbed or even to get killed. We don't want that to happen. So we as Bahamians need to pay more attention to that. And if you see it happening as you stop, just tell the person stop. They should do the same thing to try to safeguard our tourists.
Sure.
That's our project.
I actually have a funny story to tell you about that. When I was the executive director of the Nassau Tourism and Development Board, had a complaint that came in, and because we shared all the complaints with the Ministry of Tourism, we had very, very close contact. A man went to the police and complained that he was trying to buy cocaine and he got baby powder and aspirin, and he wanted to register a police complaint. So I can't say
No
that,
words.
that
There are no words. There are no words.
But I think I think many visitors come here and think that they're coming into a land that's a free-for-all. They can.
Yes,
they can
I
relax.
wanted to. We'll talk about that a little later, and sort of what the perception is coming in. But Eldridge, just before we go to the break, because we've got to go very quickly, do Bahamians see tourism as our brand? Do you think that it is promoted enough as something that we need to protect? You're in the brand promotion business, and we always talk about, safeguarding your brand and putting the things in place. We used to have a slogan years ago, tourism, it's all of our business.
It's our
But
business.
do we really understand the importance of this brand, and you think we get it?
And I don't think that we get it completely. And I say that one of the best examples, we have a lot of cottage industries, we have a lot of street vendors, etc., that are in the business of tourism. And I don't think they've made a conscious decision even in terms of their physical appearance. If I'm going to approach a stranger, maybe I should have a uniform, maybe I should look a certain way, maybe I should present my product in a certain way.
Take a bath would be good.
And exactly. And it doesn't all require these deep levels of investment. But I always say to clients, make yourself the customer. If you were the customer, how would you like a business person to approach you? And that's the method that you seem to repeat. So if we had more street vendors wearing clean shirts, it doesn't even have to be a branded shirt. If we had more street vendors thinking about how do I position and package my product, and then if we have the industries and organizations that are responsible for regulating these vendors kind of take a really earnest approach instead of shooing them, say, well, how do I embrace this? And how do I make sure that, maybe give them a vest, maybe, create or provide something, okay, you all are branded and you belong to this industry, come here at this organization, we get you registered, and etc. So there's some things that we need to do as a country as well to make sure that we're all playing our part in building this tourism brand.
Good point. Folks, we are at the point of our first break for our audience. We are going to take that quick break and come back with more on the record right after this. Hello and welcome to On the Record, and the balanced, true and open debate you've been looking for.
Hi, I'm here to tell you about the fastest way to purchase the vehicle you want right from home. With SBT Japan, we import used cars from Japan straight to you. Car ownership doesn't have to be hard. Go to sbtjapan.com and sign up for free. Search for the car you want, place your order, and make a payment using any one of our convenient payment options. Once you pay the duty and tax to our in-house broker, we will clear the vehicle and even deliver it straight to your home. Sounds too easy? Well, shouldn't it be?
This portion of On the Record is brought to you by Generali Insurance Company Limited, your employee benefit specialist.
And we are back. Tourism officials, government, and even the general public were shocked, to say the least, to learn that the U.S. State Department had issued a travel advisory for the Bahamas because of violent crime. It's our topic tonight, fact or false alarm, the U.S. crime advisory in perspective. My guest, Assistant Commissioner of Police Clayton Fernando, along with Eldry Ferguson, a partner of Diane Phillips and Associates, Eldry Ferguson Mackey, a partner with Diane Phillips and Associates, and Diane Phillips with Diane Phillips and Associates, to make sure your husband doesn't call me after the show and ask if I forgot your last name. So, folks, one of the areas targeted in that report, or a couple of the places, they said over the hill areas, Waukee, one of the areas of concern. Assistant Commissioner, I'm going to start with you. It's not always been the greatest area. There have been challenges in the past, but I was very surprised when I saw a place like Waukee.
Yes. I think that is Waukee pretty much is a safe place that you could take your family and visitors could come and enjoy themselves. You have a police station right in the center, and you have officers on foot patrol, and then you have mobile units flashing their lights, especially late evenings, flashing their lights into the night. And we are checking the stores to ensure that persons there are safe, and the owners of those stores do exactly what they're supposed to do to ensure that their patrons are safe.
And then there's reference to Sand Trap that closed 3 years ago, right next to the Marines compound. Like, they could look over the wall and see that it's closed.
The last murder happened there was 2016, where a young lady
and it closed right after
that. We pretty much shut that down from that same very evening after that shooting, and have never opened since. So that you passed in the evening, it's closed down, and nobody hangs there. One or two jet ski operators may come in from the back.
And they store some vehicles in the area there.
Exactly. So that is pretty much shut down. From 2016, we had no crime happen in that area.
Eldry, does that speak, though, to your point about this lack of communication between the authorities, you know, at the embassy? Or, I mean, who's compiling this information?
The consulates, it feels like nobody's talking. Everybody's working in these vacuums, and there seems to be a lack or no communication. But really, in terms of a response and talking and piggybacking from Diane's comment on crisis management, you know, Assistant Commissioners is bringing up lots of points that needed to be refuted. And lots of time people think that, you know, if something comes up, I must bury my head in the sand and just hope and pray that it goes away. And I think this is one of the instances where we needed to bring up some of the salient points, refute the salient points, and even if it meant, you know, issuing documentaries, doing short blurbs, you know, social media is out there, it's ever present, and it's one of the most effective forms of communicating. Short 60-second videos. This is the Bahamas, this is how safe we are, these are our stats, this is what we're doing. There's so many subtle ways that you can refute the commentary and push your message into the right channels that I do think that some of these points really need to be refuted, because it really puts the wrong impression out there, and we need to try to mend the brand.
True, I just want to comment on that. I believe that the Royal Bahamas Police Force and the U.S. Embassy have a good relationship. We continue to build on our relationship. Every crime that happened against a citizen, we reach out.
You mean a U.S. citizen?
Yes, a U.S. citizen. We reach out and they will be brought up to date with those matters. So we continue to have that relationship, and we communicate just pretty much on a daily basis. If something like that happens, we run operations together. As you could see, 3 major operations in the last year. So we have that good relationship. So
yeah, no, to your point, I'm wondering whether this report is compiled in a State Department office somewhere in Washington, sort of, you know, completely devoid of real input from the folks on the ground here.
Well, in the past, I know I've been called into the American Embassy here just for an economic, political, social report update. I don't know if they still do that, if they call people in from the community. They used to years and years ago. And one of the questions they always ask, how safe do you think Nassau is? And quite safe, and safer now in many ways, and especially in well-lit areas. You know, I personally hate to hear the words, well, we don't want people walking over the hill. All right, we know that there are risks, but we also know that there's tremendous culture that exists over the hill. I'd like to see us establish certain routes, like going to the National Art Gallery, going up Meeting Street, going up where Educulture is, and say, please experience Nassau, please experience the Bahamas the way that you think the Bahamas should be experienced, and not just in a glitzy, ritzy hotel room where everything is so clean and sterile and glamorous that you're not seeing the other
not a real representation.
Yes, because that's the beauty of the Family Islands. Now, if we need to do a few things to make it more practical, for instance, why do we require that street vendor Eldred was speaking about to come to Bahama Host in a building somewhere that may be difficult
to
for them
take time
to
off
get
from
to.
his only source of income?
Right.
Yeah.
So why not have Bahama Host go out to the street?
Agreed.
Why not post signs, attractive signs, welcome to the Bahamas? Marijuana is not legal here. We do not encourage you to take long rides on the back of a jet boat with somebody, a jet ski with somebody you do not know.
Yeah.
Ask to see insurance certification or
certificate or these things.
I think that there are a lot
educate our guests.
I think that there are ways to do it, and I think what we're missing, similar to the piece that was put out there, is we need to move away from the conventional forms of communication.
Agreed.
We need to understand who we're communicating to, and even though we're communicating a message, the way we communicate that message to different target audiences or different individuals is different. Everybody will receive it differently, and I think we need to start examining the messaging, the channels that we use, and making sure that everybody gets the message in the way that they would most receive it.
And Jerome, once every week, the commander of Central Division, who has responsibility of the tourist area, meet with representatives from tourism, and they just come together and discuss any concerns. The police would let them know.
So this is an ongoing
relationship and communication. And if any concerns on both sides, we address it right there.
But I do want to sort of speak to some realities that are out there that could have led to this, or that will lead to things like this. For instance, you have reports of jet ski operators involved in in instances of sexual assault. You have complaints about harassment and different things. There are people peddling drugs. I mean, I see these fellas out there, selling drugs to the tourists. You looking for some of this, you looking for some of that.
Want a party?
Yeah. So these things are happening. That is the reality. And it only takes one incident.
Yes. Yes, that is real, and we continue to try to disrupt things like that where you find individuals are harassing. Yes, we had individuals charged for sexual harassment with tourists. They were charged. We found some that was unfounded as well. And persons who are on the beach, just say Cabbage Beach over Paradise Island, it continues, not regulated with the vendors out there. And that's what we are trying to regulate at this time. We are speaking to that with tourism so that it can be properly regulated. And we do a lot of covert operations actions to try to nip it in the bud to disrupt any kind of sales of drugs to the tourists.
I like the word disrupt because you're never going to completely eliminate crime and criminal activity nowhere in the world. And then to your point, you made, we discourage people from going over the hill, but you go in any major city, in any major country, and there are areas of concern, but you go into these areas to experience the culture, you experience different things. I mean, you go to New York, London, DC, wherever you go, Atlanta, there are places that are considered dangerous, but there are things going on in those areas.
Right, Jerome. So if we go to New York and we go to Chinatown, for instance,
one of my favorite places.
Or we go to Greenwich Village.
Yeah.
We want the experience, and the people who come to the Bahamas want a Bahamian experience.
Exactly.
They can have a hotel experience anywhere. They could go to Charleston or Atlanta or any of 1,000 places around the world. But they want the Bahamian experience. My daughter, who just got married a week ago Saturday, is in Jakarta, Indonesia right now. She's on a buying trip. She has a lovely furniture store called Oasis in Sandyport, and she goes all over the world sourcing things, and she has a lot of things made. But they are confined to their hotel room. They take transportation to the furniture fair, and then they go back because of the smog, the dirt, the crime, etc. And so she has not experienced what she has been able to experience in other countries. The Bahamas is not like that. People come here and they are free to experience just about anything, and that's what they want. People don't want things so much anymore. They want experiences. It's up to us as the host country to create the right environment for those experiences.
Do we find, though, that people come here looking for utopia? They think, oh, the Bahamas paradise. It's completely safe. It's great. Like sometimes I say, do these people have cars where they come from? It's just about as simple as walking across the street. It's like they pay no attention to traffic or the rules of do we give that impression sometimes that this is a perfect place or it's paradise?
Well, I think we've made some mistakes in terms of what we do allow. And I know that I'm going to be criticized for this, but it's important, and I think it's Road Safety Week. Maybe Stephen and Andrew can explain. But we allow people who are not accustomed to driving on the left to get into these four-wheel machines, whatever they are. They're like open buggies, and they take off, and they've never driven anything like that. They've never driven on the left before, and we let them rent mopeds and little motorcycles into traffic. And in Jamaica, for instance, if you want to do that, or in other countries, you have to show that you've got a motorcycle license. You have to show that you are qualified to drive that kind of equipment. Here, anybody can get on one and get into traffic, and so I think
do they do like a tutorial? I mean, do you have to do
Here's how you turn it on. If you have a problem, call me.
There are some agencies that do tutorials, etc. But I would like to go back to the point on the Utopia. And I think it's important because I think this is where, and going to Assistant Commissioner's point, there's still a lot of work, that can be done in terms of regulating. And he mentioned working with the Ministry of Tourism, etc., etc. But I think we do present the Utopia. We do, even in our imagery and in our marketing, we present this is free, this is paradise, you do as you please, etc. You can jaywalk, you can do. So there's some things that if we would like to see, exactly, and there's a lot in advertising that we put in the subliminal. We may not say it in the written word. We also say it we also do and encourage it in our lack of enforcement. So if there are people there and people are walking all across the streets, or people are doing things that they're not supposed to do, tourist or not, you get a ticket.
In all fairness, I don't think that Americans know that our crosswalk, the symbol we use for a crosswalk is not a symbol that's used in the United States. So I think if we just marked it cross here or crosswalk or something.
But I just think sometimes they just don't deploy common sense.
And they're in this free spirit. They're in this very free spirit. I'm on vacation. I'm relaxing. I'm jiving, etc.
Again, to a point too, you brought up something about regulations, and a lot of times we have. We wait until a situation hits a critical point and then we step back and try to regulate. And we see it all the time. I mean, I no disrespect, but I look at, for instance, like a Junkanoo Beach. That's exploding. And I'm saying to myself almost on a daily basis, what are we doing out here to put some regulations in place to ensure that, that nothing major happens out here? But again, we as Bahamians will rail against that. The moment that there is a discussion about regulating or getting a permit, oh, you're trying to take bread out of my mouth, and oh, you're trying to destroy my business. Well, we don't want to sometimes comply with rules.
I believe we need the enforcement of it,
Yeah,
and we have to be firm with that in enforcement. And you mentioned Junkanoo Beach, as you are aware, spring break is upon us at this time, and we have a unit just focusing on spring break. And just a few days ago, there was an event on Junkanoo Beach. Over 1,200 tourists
on that beach.
was on that beach. Over 1,200 tourists, and we police it properly without an incident.
Okay.
So there are things that we have to continue to be focused, because they could be vulnerable, the tourists could be vulnerable, and we're looking out for those individuals who want to prey on tourists.
Now, I'm glad you brought up spring break. This is probably one of the most vulnerable times for us in terms of what can happen, because you're talking about college kids, who many of them are under the drinking age in the United States. They come here to, I'm going to use the term, wild out.
Yes.
Are we susceptible and more vulnerable at this particular time?
Yes, at this time is really vulnerable, and that's where the police and tourism have to play a big role in trying to assist in managing that properly, because you will find individuals overdo it with alcohol and then put themselves in a position where either they get robbed or some sexual act, and then they're wondering what happened and can't even remember exactly what happened. So I believe this period now, the police is vigilant, they are out there, and tourism is on board as well in terms of trying to manage and assist to get the right message out to the youngsters out there.
And you know, we're going to go to a break on this, but it is always the catch-22. You want the tourists, you want the numbers. I mean, spring break is a time everybody's going to make money, but then you are dealing with so many potential risks. So it does obviously pose some challenges. If you are enjoying our discussion, stay tuned. Our show continues right after this break.
Matt, where in the world is Matt Lauer? Where in the world is Ellison Greenslade? And so it's about the low value of Cottage Industry in Atlanta. So we can talk about it.
More on the record tonight, the government's purchase of the Grand Waukee is a hot subject in the news. We're going to...
I have no regrets of switching. Like I say, I tell other persons that call me from the other carriers that they need to get on this system, because you always cutting off when I still here waiting, listening for you. So definitely I tell them, hey, you need to come on board. My name is Byron Andrews, and I believe in best.
Our topic tonight on the record, fact or false alarm, the U.S. Crime Advisory in Perspective. My guest, Assistant Commissioner of Police Clayton Fernanda, Eldry Ferguson Mackey, a partner with Diane Phillips and Associates, and Diane Phillips of Diane Phillips and Associates. A lot of the things we touched on as we went into the break was this whole concern about spring break. And sometimes I think we are a victim of the things that make us so attractive. We do not have a drinking age. We invite sometimes the kind of activities that are shunned upon by other countries. And as we were discussing in the break, there is sometimes this perception that the rules don't apply in the Bahamas. How do we begin to fix that? What do we do without sort of damaging the industry or making it so stringent that, you know, people may think twice about coming? What do we do, you know, from a management perspective?
Well, I think one of the things that we can do, as I mentioned before, is very easy. We don't have to do it through social media or anything. We can do it through actual physical signage when you arrive in Nassau.
At the airport.
Welcome to the Bahamas.
Or the cruise port.
The cruise port. So you're walking into town and you see directional signage, which we have way too many commercial signs and way too few directional and informational signs. But we're not providing that information. So we run these commercials that are gorgeous, like the ones from Bahamas or Atlantis, and you get the sense someone's diving into the water and suddenly they're younger than they used to be. Right? I want that water. I want that dive. But at any rate, you get the sense that the Bahamas is all about freedom. That's the story that we're telling. We have not done a good job telling our general story about our history, about the Lucayans. We haven't named the waters the Lucayan Sea yet. Hopefully that will happen this year. But we tell a story that we are a place of freedom. We talk about the religious freedom. We show commercials that are all about enjoying yourself and being free. And then we say to the visitor, well, why are you doing this in our country? Why do you think that it's okay to smoke weed here where you can't at home? Or why do you think it's okay to jump on the back of a jet ski without checking to see if they're licensed? Or to drive...
Or jump off of the cruise ship. Into the harbor.
Or all of the things that you wouldn't do, have way too much to drink and then be ill on the way back to the ship, etc. So I think part of it is we're not providing the information we could provide.
Right. And it's simple, and I think one of the key takeaways too is, assistant commissioners noted that, these task forces do exist, and I think one of the best ways in communication, without oversimplifying it, is to be more proactive in our communication. So if we recognize and we study that there are trends and behavior patterns that are happening and that patterns are occurring among tourists and it's disintegrating or it's abusing the brand, then let's be proactive about our messaging and the information. Let's tell tourists, I know we talked about it during the break, welcome to the Bahamas, and like Diane said, marijuana is not legal here. There are ways that you can communicate things that are fun, that are friendly, and it's kind of the wave of the future now. You see subtle messages. I've traveled to Trinidad. I see, all of these, comical messages about buckling up. You don't want to, they use rhyme, they use local humor, etc., to convey a message to the tourists when they're coming. St. Vincent, St. Lucia, they all do the very same things. So it's almost like we need to start to evolve. As the industry and as the world evolve, our communications need to evolve. And if we're trying to safeguard the tourism industry, then we need to look at ways that we could prevent these things from happening.
Is it true that we need a lot more enforcement on tourists when they break the law?
Yes, we do. Well, they have to abide by the law. In any country which they go, they have to abide by the law. It's just not free that they could do anything. They have to
understand that.
Yes, it have to. And again, that communication level. I think these are things that needs to be communicated to the.
But and again in the messaging, all of the images you see of Bahamian police officers are the white tunics downtown taking pictures with the tourists. The police are our friends.
It's to the earlier point that we said, we've done so much with the subliminal messaging that now we've actually created this huge task of trying to balance the message. We want you to come, we want you to have a good time. I'm even thinking about the imagery from some of the Las Vegas campaigns where they say, you gamble, but what happens stays. So there are all sorts of subtle ways that we can get the message out, and we can help and work with the Royal Bahamas Police Force, etc., and kind of do this hand in hand and make sure that we're proactive, we're messaging, but we're also presenting this tourism product and brand. And I think we just really need to shift the paradigm in terms of the way we do it.
I always like to bring a discussion back to individual responsibility. And we don't all work in tourism, but we all have a responsibility. And everything, everything has a domino effect. The things that we do, the illegal activities that we do, as individuals sometimes will give that perception of the lawlessness. We talked about running the red lights.
You mean the optional light?
Yeah. you should stop. We do things sometimes, I find, that give the outside world, give our tourists and our visitors the impression that we don't follow the law.
Yes, that is so, and they are things that we have to. You always have to deal with your own door mouth first.
Say it again. Right?
You have to deal with sweep before your own door, and then let it get out there. But you have to start home as you, and to be able to send the right message out to our visitors. And as I said, that is our lifeline. So we have to assist in showing that everything goes right.
You know, as odd as this sounds, and I know that this is risky, I think that there is a general reluctance on the part of many Bahamians to, quote, get involved. There has been a fear that if you speak up, something will be held against you at some point. It goes back to an old fear of victimization. I don't think we can separate what happens with the tourism industry from other things that happen in our general lives. On the way to work this morning, I called 919 because I didn't have the hotline for water and sewage, and there was a big leak at the corner of Johnson Road and Bay Street. Or Easton Road. And when I called 919 and I said, I'm sorry to trouble you, I just wanted the hotline for water and sewage, they said, oh, the water and sewage is aware of that leak. Thank you for calling. I thought that was great. Somebody else had
called into the same
mechanism. They weren't afraid to get involved. But ask yourself honestly, how many times do you see something that you know you should say something
a lot
and
of times,
you don't?
yeah.
And you don't. Why don't you say it? In the back of your mind, there's a fear of victimization.
It's interesting too, and I kind of turned the conversation on its head and talking about us being our own individual brand ambassadors. And I gleaned from my own personal experience, and we talked a lot about people coming to Nassau in particular and not really understanding what is the culture of Nassau. And I recall, I think it was about 8 or 10 years ago, I sat down and I had a conversation with some of my colleagues, and someone said something to me that offended me, and they said, Nassau has no culture. It's so Americanized. You know, I'd never go back to Nassau again. I may as well go to Fort Lauderdale. And for a moment I had to pause because I had to think about it. And I was like, well, did you visit the Out Islands, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And he said, no, have you? You know, and so here it is as Bahamians and persons that should be our own brand ambassadors. We have so many Bahamians that have taken multiple trips to Miami but have never visited Cat Island.
Well,
that have
Cat Island doesn't have a Walmart.
Exactly. It have never, you know, and so for me that was a personal responsibility. I need to be able to see every island in the Bahamas so the next time the conversation comes up, I can defend my country. And ironically, in my last visit, it came up and someone said, oh, the Bahamas. I said, well, no, you haven't seen the Bahamas. Have you been to Eleuthera? Have you seen the, you know, the blue holes? Have you seen the bridge, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? But we also have to take some personal responsibility in communicating. And even as business persons in cottage industries, small business persons, stop mimicking the American product and let's put out our own product. You know, abandon some of the, you know, the popular patterns and maybe wear androgyne and make that a part of your uniform. So let's stop mimicking some of the other cultures and let's try to represent our own. And I think everything that we do, it's hand in hand. What's the brand? What's the message? You know, what's the image that we're trying to portray?
One of the things that you talked about earlier that I want us to go back to just for a brief moment is, you know, we're talking about these cottage industries and people who are, you know, using any opportunity in entrepreneurship to try and make a few bucks. I mean, years ago, and I guess it's a sign of the times, you didn't see as many street vendors doing the things that people are doing now just to make a living. You have guys up and down, you know, West Bay Street who are doing the coconut water on a daily basis. People are doing, you know, handcraft and selling them in different places, and people are doing whatever they can to get by. In many instances, though, these folks cannot find jobs elsewhere. And whether it's they're not qualified or something would have happened in their past to prevent them from now securing, you know, a job in some mainstream industry. So now they're out there trying to make a dollar. And without proper training or even coming with a record or coming with a background, etc., there's that other now, you know, there's the issue of that vulnerability now because, you know, these folks out to make a living, they aren't concerned about the brand or the product or, you know, how they're going to affect the business that's right next door to them. You know, you have a legitimate business, you're paying your business license, you're paying electricity, you're trying to run a business, but that guy on the side of you may have done something or is doing something, or by his mere presence, he's stopping business from coming into your establishment. I mean, and that is a real concern.
Yes, it is a concern, and what we found that in the various districts, the commanders in the various districts, you'll find if you go in the Carmichael Road district, you'll find a lot of little setups on the side of the road. We try to encourage them and to guide them to go and get a permit. It may be you can't stay in this area, but there's an other area that you could move your business.
So it's not just close down your business.
Exactly.
Okay.
We try to help them out because we don't want them to just move away and then maybe go back into the life of crime. But you can see that they are trying to help themselves and their family. So we assist them in trying to get permits and move to a general location where they are not trying to disrupt other people's business.
I think part of the issue, the larger issue, though, and we should spend some time focusing on it with these talented people here, is we actually don't know what our brand is. You can set up for crisis management if you know what your brand is. If Tiger Woods, for instance, had, when his wife found his phone, if he had just said, you know what, I did it, I was wrong, I am so sorry, it will never happen again. We know that's not true, but because he had a penchant for it. But it sounded. He might have been able to save his brand at that time instead of spending the next few years, without anything, without his golf game, without his friends, without Nike, trying to recover. And what did he lose? I've forgotten. $12 million in a matter of minutes or something. And that was the biggest recovery of or attempted recovery of the biggest brand of all time. Tylenol, Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson. They're all examples of recovery or attempted recovery because they didn't have crisis management in place at the time. What do we have for crisis management?
Good point. Folks, we've got to take our final break. You are watching On the Record. Our final segment is right after this quick break.
Hi, I'm here to tell you about the fastest way to purchase the vehicle you want right from home. With SBT Japan, we import used cars from Japan straight to you. Car ownership doesn't have to be hard. Go to sbtjapan.com and sign up for free. Search for the car you want, place your order, and make a payment using any one of our convenient payment options. Once you pay the duty and tax to our in-house broker, we will clear the vehicle and even deliver it straight to your home. Sounds too easy? Well, shouldn't it be?
You know, Matt, where in the world is Matt Lauer? Where in the world is Ellison Greenslade? And so it's about the low value of Cottage Industry in Atlanta. So we can talk about it.
More on the record tonight, the government's purchase of the Grand Waukee is a hot subject in the news. We're going to Welcome back. The U.S. State Department travel advisory for the Bahamas is the reason we are having this discussion tonight. Our topic is fact or false alarm, the U.S. crime advisory in perspective. Folks, we're winding down. I want to quickly get to a few more points. One of the new phenomena in global travel is this whole issue of the Airbnb concept, and even in something Uber now, where ordinary folks are in the tourism business. We haven't gotten an Uber yet, but I think we have something sort of similar.
Easy.
Yeah. But you have now people who are opening their homes to visitors, and they're all over the island. I see people all the way east. I see them in Carmichael. They're in the west. They're everywhere. And I brought it up when the tourism minister was here, but that sometimes gives me reason to pause, because I say to myself, these areas have not traditionally been tourist areas. They've usually been confined to 2 or 3 places, but now all of a sudden you have people that are living amongst us, and there are visitors. I mean, is that something that is of concern that you sort of keep an eye out for as well?
Yes, that is. And what you find that persons go live on the internet and advertise their homes, and then they eventually come in. But that is something, because there was 2 visitors who we arrested in the eastern area, and they were found with a number of fraudulent credit cards, and they were operating right from a home in the eastern area.
Really?
And they were arrested and found in the home. So that is a concern for us, and we continue to pay attention to it, because you could find that a lot of criminal activities could be going on out there. You don't know who these individuals are, who comes into your shores and living, as you said, right among us, and don't even know that who is next door. So that is a concern for us, and we have that on the radar based on that recent.
And then too, you know, I may have a space in my home that I'm, you know, renting out as an Airbnb, and I'm looking after the folks who are there by making sure it's secure, etc. But my neighbors around me may be, you know, they may have other motives and see these people moving in and out. You know.
But you're looking at the security of your country as well.
Yeah.
That these persons are coming in, we don't know who they are.
Yeah, so there's the point I didn't even think
What
of.
I would suggest is that the Ministry of Tourism, along with the Royal Bahamas Police Force, actually create a document that can be placed in every person's home who is on Airbnb, because tourism has a relationship with Airbnb.
Yeah, they do.
So they know who's booking.
They collect taxes, so I know they do.
They can get it online. Now, they won't have it for VRBO, vacation rental by owner, or home away from home away it's called. But they have it with Airbnb, which is by far the largest provider of home experiences. This is a trend that is only going to grow.
It is.
People love it.
It's a great source of income.
It won't stop the hotel business from being successful, but hotels, like retail stores, will have to become more creative about the entertainment that they offer, the culinary choices, etc. Now you have this other option of living in a neighborhood, getting to know the local people, cooking for yourself,
the
and not
culture.
spending the culture. There are tremendous advantages to it. But let's provide those people with the basic information. Here are the rules of engagement in the Bahamas.
And even emergency numbers and things to come in.
Local churches.
Exactly. This is what you do. And I mean, I have a confession. I have, you know, I'm a travel enthusiast, and I have not stayed in a hotel in probably a year or so.
I love Airbnb myself.
I go to Airbnbs.
I love them. Yeah.
And to Diane's point, it's an industry that's only going to evolve. It's the biggest hotel, but they don't own a building.
Right.
You know, it's only going to evolve. So we're going to have to take advantage of it in our communication. So if you stay at an Airbnb, you know that there's basic communication. There's basic communication from local ministries, from the police, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the pertinent question is, how are we evolving in our communications, in our marketing, in our messaging, in our engagements in the police force, etc., to make sure that we recognize this trend, take advantage of it, and make sure that we message and communicate to the individuals so that, again, we keep this brand protected and we keep the Bahamas safe.
And a message to our citizens as well. You know, to Bahamas, like, you know, we tell people, you know, don't throw your trash out the window, keep your area clean. We tell people to do all these things, but are we effectively telling our people, let's look after the tourists? They're important.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's also keeping in mind that the tourists are not going to be in the traditional areas anymore.
Yes, no, they aren't.
You know, tourists can be in Carmichael Road, they can be in the
I see them all the time.
They want the experience. Walking down from Montague, walking onto the beach at Montague, and in that whole Village Road area.
I see them in Sea Breeze, I see them in Carmichael, I see them in Coral Harbor.
And we don't expect them to wear T-shirts and
say, I'm a tourist.
But it's like we really have to expand. We really have to expand. We have to get out of the conventions. We have to get out of the silos. And we really have to go back and really rethink the approach, because it's so much bigger than it used to be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even 2 years ago. So that should be the call.
So it's actually a good turning point or a milestone. We had this advisory that none of us, we're all relatively intelligent people, none of us believe was warranted. I loved what Ed Field said about it when he actually did the statistics, and it was like 0.7%. You know, you can't even one crime, one offense against all of this. When you think that we have 6 million tourists a year here, and there were 43 incidents. At any rate, so we move past the unwarranted. So this is a turning point, though. What have we learned? How do we tell our story? How do we explain to tourists what the rules are when they arrive here after we've done all this advertising saying, come and be
Spend
free.
millions and millions of dollars
come and
to
be
come.
free, and they come and they act free.
And you say, no, you're not free.
Note to self.
Okay, it's a very good point. As we wrap up the show tonight, I want to use this opportunity. The journalist and me, Assistant Commissioner, would not have allowed you to come here and not speak to this. It's a little outside of what we are here to discuss, but it does have implications. As we speak, there is this situation that has even potential international implications at this point. There's a spate of child abductions. Children are being taken, returned in a relatively short time frame, unharmed. That is creating some concern locally, and I'm sure if it continues, it's going to get picked up, internationally, that we have this trend.
Yes, it is a concern, Jerome, and I want to let members of the public know that their police force is on top of that. We are working with a number of other agencies in terms of social service and the crime watch areas in the different communities. We are working along with them. Actually, we have a meeting at 6 p.m. with all of the crime watch areas, so we could release some information to them.
You guys have a sketch as well, some sketches,
yes,
which we do have.
Sketches,
we're going to put up.
We will highlight them. But we are actively investigating 5 matters, and they are individuals between the ages of 3 to 10 years old. In that 5, you had one female, a young child, a female, who was taken from the home, as highlighted, but all of the victims in these matters has since been recovered unharmed. They were checked out by the doctor, and no kind of sexual assault or anything has come to them. But we want to, because when you start messing with our children, they are our precious world. They are the future.
And that takes on a different, that's a whole different
turn,
situation.
because all of us have kids, and that's a different approach. So we want to send a plea out there to members about that. The individual responsible is right out there, and somebody knows who that person is. And we are appealing to members of the public with whatever information they have to please come forward and share it with the police. Overnight, we had a female we brought into custody. At this time, she's being questioned. We don't know how far we will get with her, but based on information we are following, she is in custody, just came into custody.
But I have to ask, sir, is there a profile on a suspect like this? Like, do you have any idea what would be the motivation or why? I mean, it just seems so very bizarre.
Well, that's what we have since opened up an incident room at the Central Detective Unit. We are following a number of lines of inquiries. We have individuals on board who are pretty much educated in that area. We are looking at maybe someone who maybe had kids taken away from them. There are lines of inquiries that we are following. We are not clear on the motive, because the children are taken from point A and end up in point B and just left there. So that is a concern for us. So again, we are appealing to members of the public, and we will release you have the sketch, 3 different sketches from different victims that we are following. And if you look at the sketches, they're almost similar if you bring them together. So we believe that they are the same persons involved in 3 of the incidents.
First of all, I just want to thank you for sharing the information with us, and hopefully, it's going to be helpful in somebody recognizing this individual. But, we do want to say to parents at all times that you have a responsibility as well to safeguard your children, and now more than ever, look after your kids when you're in their care. As we wrap up, though, you look at something like this, Di, you look at where we are with this. Obviously, it's not directly related, but it is in a way. I mean, we're not known for this kind of
because the word spreads faster than it's ever spread before. Because if a child abduction happens here and it gets out on social media, it's viral in no time
Every news agency is online.
Bad news spreads 5 times faster than good news. I have a request for police. How can you stop calling something when you've got an elderly man who's assaulting a little child?
That's another show.
Stop calling them having sexual relations with. That's not sexual relations, that's rape.
That's a whole other show, Di. But I appreciate your point. Most definitely.
And then the last point. One of the things is we start to really redefine our story, because we've got a great story to tell. This is the perfect time to say we are now in the Lucayan Sea. Let's
I like that.
Let's
Yeah,
name our waters at last.
Finally, give our people a dessert.
I just want to recognize that we are celebrating March month. The police force is celebrating the 179th anniversary, and they have continue to have a lot of activities.
179.
179.
Wow.
We started it off in church to give God thanks for guiding and protecting us as we move. Our senior officers and officers who went before us, who started from 1840, they had laid a foundation, and we now are just putting the blocks together.
I have a confession to make to you. My grandfather, the late George Knowles, was an inspector on the force. One of the first black inspectors back in the 50s, I think it was. So, I have a personal connection. But, sir, I want to tell you thank you. And please convey that to all members of the Royal Bahamas Police Force for the great job that you do in keeping us safe. It's not an easy job. I know that. I could give the police problems sometimes. I can lie. We all give a little push back.
My late grandfather-in-law was the first Bahamian commissioner of police. So
fantastic.
George Knowles worked with him.
Yes. So there is a connection, and we appreciate that. Eldridge's laughing. We appreciate the work that the police do in keeping all of us safe, Bahamians as well as our visitors, and we appreciate that, and thank you so much. Diane Phillips, welcome. This is your first time on the show, but
actually,
thank you.
You forgot. I was on one of your first or second show, Jerome.
That's right. Yes.
I guess it meant more to me than
sometimes I forget. You're right. Di, thank you again for coming. We appreciate it. Continue to do the great work that you do. I mean, in your business, the work you do is important, but I know that you are involved in a lot of agencies in the Bahamas and a lot of organizations that help to
I'm surprised people still take my calls. Hi,
that's
can I have
all right. No. You're still a respected name, and thank you so much for the work that you do. Eldry, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. I know that you recently started this new venture with Diane Phillips, and you couldn't have landed in a better place.
In a better place.
Yeah, and continue to do the great work that you do as well.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. And I think one of the things that working with Di has afforded me is the freedom.
Yes.
So maximizing the potential. So looking forward to the continued relationship.
Yes, we have to bring you back on to talk about some other stuff some other time.
Protecting the brand.
Protecting the brand, most definitely. And see, I get to be the boss today. I call the shots. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Folks, we hope that you have enjoyed our show tonight. Special thanks to my guests, Assistant Commissioner Clayton Fernanda, Eldry Ferguson Mackey, and Diane Phillips for all being here this evening and sharing with us. I'd like to also thank my producer and technical staff. Once again, I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. We'll see you next time.